Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So let's see. We'll wait for a person or two to show up and then ask if they have questions. Meanwhile, I'll let you know that I'm doing the Nakshatra Sutra class, and also I just released the Houses class for self-study. Hey, Aaron and Lavarela. Okay, so guys, you're the first ones here, ladies. So let's say, give me a question. This is what we're going to do. We'll just take any kind of questions. Got one? Who's got a question? First question I see, I'll answer. Hello, everyone. Thank you for showing up. So you type the question into the chat, and then I'll see it. Navin, nice to meet you. Nice to see you. Liv, Lisa. All right, here's the question. Here's the first question ever on my Let's Talk Astrology QA live. Sun in Aries, mutual aspect with retrograde Saturn in Libra. Cool question, right? So Saturn in Aries. Oh, Sun in Aries and Saturn in Libra. So there you have the Sun is exalted and Saturn is exalted. And so they're going to be influencing each other. Typically, what would you expect from a Saturn-Sun interaction? You would expect, as I mentioned in that last video that I did with Parisa, you would expect clashes with authority and perhaps even problems with father figures, authority figures. However, if they're both exalted, let's assume that therefore the dignity of both of them is good. And as we know, the basic theory about dignity is that when you have dignity, you're in a good mood. And when you're in a good mood, you do nice stuff. You do nice things for people. You're not mean. So the planet who has dignity shouldn't really deliver any of the negative possible interpretations, right? So the mutual aspect of Saturn in Libra and Sun in Aries, I would put up as the baseline interpretation of that very good relationships, dealing with authorities, dealing with correcting authorities, ability to correct authorities productively, and to be accepted in that role and not shunned from that role. That would be the base interpretation, and you gotta, see the rest of the chart, see if that actually works with the rest of the chart. Okay. All right, so this is what I'm going to do now. I'm not going to look back at the rest of the answers. I bet the rest of the questions that you already answered, that you already asked. And also, I'm not really going to ask if that answer was satisfying, because I just want to go through a lot of answers and off the top of my head give you go through a lot of questions and off the top of my head give you the answers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, here's time for the next question. The first question that I see when I open my eyes in the chat window is the one I'm going to answer next. Yes, the next question that I see is, may I ask a question? So yes, the answer to that question is yes. And the next question, how does Parivartana Yoga work pertaining to nakshatras? For example, the moon in Ardra and Rahu in Hasta, or Saturn in Magha and Ketu in Uttara Bhadrapada. You're welcome, Nicole. It doesn't work. Nakshatra Parivartana doesn't work. It's a mistake. You know why? Because it's a mistake to say that planets rule nakshatras. Planets don't rule nakshatras. There's just a planet-nakshatra correlation for a particular dasha system. Now, this is a mistake, but such and such astrologer uses it and gave me this fantastic interpretation based on it. That's cool. You can do fantastic things even with mistakes. You can do, that's fine. I'm not saying that you can't get a great interpretation off of a bad theory. But what I'm saying is it's not a good theory. There's no such thing as parivartana with nakshatras. Fourth question. Eyes are closed. Next question that I see in the chat window will be question number 4. And boom. Why did you start doing these? Or what got you started? That's a nice question. You know, you guys probably know Parisa by now because she's done a lot of question and answers with me that I've put on the channel, right? So I started thinking, this is awfully easy. I just do questions and answers with somebody and then upload it. It's a lot easier than the other videos that I do where I gotta edit it. Those other videos take like 4 or 5 hours. So I thought, this is so easy and people like it. So why not take it a step further and just let anybody ask the questions? So I'm going to keep doing that with Parisa because she's got a real talent for asking questions on a specific theme. So it makes a nice video. But I'll also give this a try. Okay, so what are we up to now? Question 5 or something? Here it comes. Go ahead, type it in. Type in your next question. The next one I see is the next one I'm going to answer. Radhe Shyam. Lava Rayla, you deserve to have a question answered because you were the first one here, or first or second one here. She says, I think she says, Vic, I can never find enough information about Uttara Bhadrapada. Why such a mystery? Did you see my videos about Uttara Bhadrapada? I think I did. I did at least one video on Uttara Bhadrapada on my site. And you know, it's goes along with being a mystery because Uttara Bhadrapada is destructive. It's Rudra. Destructive in the sense of it wants to achieve moksha. It wants to destroy temporary things. Uttara Bhadrapada wants to destroy temporary things that are very, very superficial. So it wants to go down deeper. And therefore, Uttara Bhadrapada is a very, very, very deep nakshatra. So that means A, it's very difficult to get to the finish line of talking about Uttara Bhadrapada because it's very deep. And B, it's very difficult to understand Uttara Bhadrapada because it's very deep. So if you're interested in Uttara Bhadrapada, you'll have a lot of learning ahead of you. But each little step of the learning is very exciting and interesting. Okay, you ready? Next question. You'll never know when exactly I'm going to open my eyes. So this makes it exciting like a Wheel of Fortune. What planetary positions made you an artist as well as an astrologer? Uh-oh, a question about me. Another one about me. What planetary positions made me an artist? Mostly what's going on with me is Jupiter and Chitra in the 10th house by itself as the most prominent planet in the chart. And sorry, I'm seeing some other people's things up there. Right, that's basically what it is for me. And then the other thing about astrology is 8th Lord in the 8th house with a combination of the 7th. Wait, I'm forgetting my houses. 8th Lord in the 8th house with a combination of the 4th and 9th Lords. So there's a Raj Yoga in my 8th house with the 8th Lord. And there's also a Raj Yoga in my 9th house. And then there's Jupiter in the 10th house. So that all winds up to being able to do astrology and stuff like that. All right, let me see what else we got here. What would I say to a dying cat? she's listening. Well, I guess she understands English. I would just talk soothing names of Hari to her, like Shyam, Shyam Sundar, Radhe Shyam, Gopal, 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 stuff like that. Just say nice words into her ear. She doesn't need to hear philosophy right now. Another question. Let's see. I gotta close my eyes, right? Let's see what the next question is. Actually, I'll do something a little different. This one caught my eye, though. Did you study Western astrology? From Paula Rocket. Nope. Never really did, but after studying Vedic astrology, I started to compare it to some of the simple basic things about Western astrology, and I did, let's say, study Christopher Brennan's book, which is that book on Hellenistic astrology. I also did an interview with him on my channel, so I do know Hellenistic astrology, which is the kind of the original form of Western astrology, and which is extremely, extremely, extremely similar to Vedic astrology, to the basic form of Vedic astrology. I see that Nuclear A has been trying to ask this question a couple of times. So he wants to know who Varuna Mitra is. So for that, just look at my YouTube channel, look in the videos that I've already done. I posted a series of the recordings of the talk that I did at the Sedona Vedic Astrology Conference. You'll hear a ton about Varuna and Mitra in there. Mitra Varuna is just Mitra and Varuna together. And then also look on my channel for the video about Shatabhishak Nakshatra. And then you'll find out about Varuna. Also, I see Babushka Day. She asks, when grahas and nakshatras make us act in certain ways, then why our soul accumulates karma? See, Krishna wanted me to see this question. Because this is an important question. So does everybody understand what our question is? See, I wish I could turn off. Let me see. Can I turn off this? Yes, I can. So I don't get distracted while I give one answer. So does everybody understand Babushka Day's question? Her question is, if the planets and stars and so forth are making us do certain things, then why do we have karma? Like, what karma means is you perform an action and therefore you get a result. You get a reaction to an action. Every action has a reaction. So what she's saying is, if the destiny is decided by planets and my actions are determined by my planets, my life is determined by my planets, then why do I have any karma? I shouldn't have karma. The planets are actually doing the things and I'm just a tool. Like if you shoot somebody with a gun, does the gun go to jail? You go to jail. So the instrument of the action is not the perpetrator of the action. So similarly, if I'm just an instrument for the planets to play out some karmic script, then why should I be getting punishments and rewards for it? See, that's her question. And her answer is exactly. That's the answer to your question. Exactly. This is exactly why it's unacceptable from a logical or philosophical point of view to believe that your destiny, that planets cause you to do things or determine your destiny or decide what's going to happen to you. So then the question is, then what the heck is astrology? I thought astrology was saying that the planets determine my destiny. See, that's just a misunderstanding of what astrology is. And I have a small book about this in case you really want to explore it. The small book is called Beautifully Rational Philosophy of Astrology. You could search for it on Amazon, or you look on my website, vicdicara.com. So the question then is, if you say that the planets aren't making me do stuff, then what is astrology? Why can I know my future through astrology? So the answer to that is, does the clock create time? The clock doesn't create time. Yet, when I saw the clock get to the half hour, I came up here and did turn on the thing. I operate according to time, and the clock shows me what time it is. But the clock is not creating my actions, nor is it creating time. And the planets and the stars and the sky is nothing but a gigantic universal natural clock for universal time. And since time is the substrate, time is the conveyor belt on which actions happen. So time and karma are one and the same. So by studying time, you understand karma. So in other words, the planets are not making you do anything. They're just indicating what results you're getting from decisions you've previously made. Since most people usually only live their life like a reflex and like a habit, then it's usually fairly straightforward to predict what they're going to do next as a result of what happens to them. So it's usually fairly straightforward process to just say this karma is going to perpetuate itself, so therefore we can predict the future. But human beings have the ability, especially the human form of life has the ability, according to the Vedas, to say, let me think about what's happening in my life, and let me think about what I want my next step to be. Let me think about how I want to react to what's happening to me. So a human being has the potential to steer the steering wheel instead of just move with the momentum of karma. Okay. Then I also had noticed that some of you are kind of like, well, let's see, there was the question about Mitra Varuna, there was the question about Uttara Bhadrapada, and then I just referred you to the videos that I had done about it, and you said, yeah, but I want to know more. Well, then you have to study. You have to study the Veda. And, welcome to the world. If you want to know more about something very mysterious, you have to dig and study and meditate and contemplate. So don't just always chase the will o' the wisp forward and forward and forward. Most of our quest for knowledge isn't really to discover new knowledge sources, but to go deeper and deeper into the presentation of knowledge that we already have. Okay, now I'm going to look back at the chat window. I like doing it this way. I'm going to do it this way. Next question. Here's an interesting one. Monica Barbosa asks, what sequence do you follow when reading Navamshas in a chart? What's the first point of focus? So, right, again, I'm doing a video series called How to Interpret Your Birth Chart. It's here on this YouTube channel. And I talk about this. The first place that you want to look, period, is the first place. What's the first place? In Sanskrit, it's called Prachin. Prachin means the first place. And it translates as east. East is the first place because that's where the sun rises. So whenever you want to start anything, your symbolic starting point is east. So when you want, that's why the ascendant is the focal point of any astrology chart in any system, almost any system. So where do you want to start by interpreting a chart? You start with the ascendant. The ascendant is the eastern horizon, because that's where the stuff ascends. That's where the stars, the planets ascend. They ascend over the eastern horizon. So hence it's called ascendant. Now, when you look at nakshatras, when I look at nakshatras, first place I look is Ascendant Nakshatra. Right? So that is the one that just tells you, here's the type of chart that you're looking at. I look at Ascendant Nakshatra before I even look at Ascendant Rashi. Because nakshatras are just special. They're so cool. Then the other principle that I want people to know that I believe about astrology is you never just want to look at one thing. You always want to look at multiple things that are similar and compare them and see what they say that's the same or what they are at odds about. So you need another point to compare with the Ascendant Nakshatra. You'll need another nakshatra focal point to compare with your ascendant nakshatra, and that should be the moon in my system. The point that I'll look at right after I look at the eastern horizon, the next thing I'm going to look at, next thing, is the moon's nakshatra, and compare the two of them and see where are they on the same page, where are they at odds with each other. Then that gives me my basic sense of what kind of chart this is, what kind of chart this can be. Then what the planets do will determine if that chart can be what it was, what type of those things that it could have been does it become. After the nakshatras of the ascendant and moon, then I look at the Rashi and its amshas that are on the ascendant. All right. You know what? There's a time delay. There's a time delay is probably about 5 seconds. So that when I close my eyes and I say, all right, the next question I'm going to look at, type it in, the next question I'm going to look at. It's a little bit unfair because you probably don't hear that message till 5 seconds later. Then I wait I probably don't wait long enough. So, okay, I'm getting ready to look for the next question. Eyes are closed. Let's let that, what is it called? Time delay expire. All right, here we go. I'm going to look at for the next question. If the first house determines how we look, and the D9 chart is, so many questions now, I can't hold on to this one. If the first house determines how we look, and the ninth house is who we become, does the first house of the ninth house show how our face will change through life? Well, first of all, that's cool thinking. Good thinking. But second of all, the ninth house isn't really... the ninth chart. First understand exactly what the Navamsha is before you riff too much on how it works. That's really what I like to see. I'd like to see people understanding what these things really are before they get really creative with riffing on them. So what the Navamsha really is Dharma. It's the Dharma Amsha. So then you need to understand what Dharma is. Dharma means the inherent quality of the thing. Dharma doesn't mean religion. The connotation of the word is religion, but the denotation of the word is the inherent quality of the thing. The Dharma has dharmis. The dharmi has its dharma. The thing, an object, a dharmi, has its dharma, the quality that makes it the object that it is. So, now why therefore do people think the word dharma means religion? Because religion means you should do what you're supposed to do. And you should know what you're supposed to do. That's what religion is all about. So based on your dharma, you have things that you are supposed to do. If your nature is that you're a mom, for example, then your dharma is you should take care of your children. If you're a dad, same thing, right? So based on what you are, then you have certain duties. And then religion is, do you follow those duties? Do you or not? To not follow them is called papam, or a sin. To follow them is called punya, or piety. Right, so that's why dharma connotes religion. And then why do people think that the D9 means navamsha? That the D9 means of marriage. Because dharma connotes religion. Religion connotes marriage. Frankly speaking, religions have things called samskars, or sacraments. And the frankly speaking part is basically the only sacrament that people observe is marriage and funeral. So the D9, particularly the seventh house of the Navamsha chart, really indicates the quality of the marriage in terms of how dharmic it is, how the people hold true to their promises and their responsibilities. Okay, so that is a bit important for understanding what the Navamsha is. Why do people therefore say that the D9, the Navamsha, is what you'll become? Because this is your dharma. Dharma is actually what you are. But the way that life works is when you're born, you don't even know how to talk. And you gradually through the course of your life, you gradually improve your awareness of yourself and your world. So the idea is, as you grow and develop as a human being, you gradually understand more and more about who you are and what is your role in the world. So you gradually start to operate more like what your Navamsha would indicate. Now that I've explained what the Navamsha really is, going back to your question, if the first house represents how we look, and the Navamsha represents what we become, does the first house of the Navamsha show what we're going to look like later on? I don't think so. I wouldn't rule it out. It's an interesting thought. Like I said in the beginning, it's an interesting way of thinking. But I think it's a little bit too far removed from the actual nature of what the Navamsha is. But I'm going to give you gold star and points for a good, interesting, creative thinking. All right. You ever notice that when I talk, I forget to breathe? I just got to breathe. All right, here we go. Next. Ready? I'll give you a couple of minutes to get the live buffering time. A couple of seconds to get the live buffering time. I'm going to look for another question. Now. Does Ketu in the 7th house, in the D9, attract a deceitful partner? Another question from Babuchka. The Ketu in the 7th house in the D9 attract a deceitful partner. Yes, it does seem to, that interpretation easily does go that way, doesn't it? So good thinking there. But also don't forget that you're looking at an interpretation that's deep. Don't forget that when you ask me a question like, does Ketu in this house or that especially like Ketu in this house in that subchart, you're going way down into the storyline and asking me what this one sentence in the story means. So don't forget, you got a lot of context that you're going to need to consider also before you finish making up your mind about this interpretation. You're going to need to think, what's the ascending nakshatra? What's the moon's nakshatra? Do they say anything about having a deceitful spouse? If they don't, then it's not all that important that Ketu is in the 7th house of the Navamsha. What about the Rashi ascending and the Navamsha of that? Does that have anything to do with the clash, the interplay between those two, the ascending Navamsha and Rashi? What about the other planets, the more prominent planets? Is Ketu a very prominent planet or not? This is all got to be the context in which you frame your interpretation of Ketu in the 7th house and the Navamsha. Okay, next question. Here, this is a very interesting one from Arvind Anugonda. Hey, Vic, we understand it's the sun that defines the signs and provides the inherent meaning of the signs. What gives inherent meaning to the nakshatras? I like that question a lot. Here's my reply. So first of all, I don't know, if everybody understands this question, it's great. The part that he says is, we understand that the sun provides the definition of the 12 zodiac signs and gives them is the anchor point around which the meaning of the symbolism of each sign is determined. The mode of the sign, the element that the sign has, which planet rules it. It's all referenced to the sun. So that's a nice point that he made. So then he wants to say, what is it that gives the nakshatras their meaning? So my reply there is, it's primarily, now don't forget, the nakshatras are things that you can actually see. The nakshatras are actual stars. The signs are not things that you can see. They're not visible. They're divisions of the sun's path. They're divisions of the sun's path by over the course of the year. So the nakshatra are things that you can see. They have that advantage. You can see them, like the planets. We can see the planets. We can see the stars. The stars are the nakshatras. So nakshatras get their basic Nakshatras get their meaning primarily from the god that's associated with the nakshatra. But why is a particular god associated with a particular nakshatra? Because the qualities of that god have something to do with the qualities that are visible about the star. And to give you a really nice example, you take Swati. The star for Swati is very, 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 very far away from the ecliptic, from the place where most of the zodiac stuff is going on, from the plane upon which most of the nakshatra stars are and where the planets go. Swati is way up here. It's Arcturus star. And so therefore they associate it with the god that blows things far away, Vayu, wind. And then they give meaning to the star based on that it's associated with Vayu and it's really far away from the rest of the stars. Kritika is the Pleiades. It looks like an explosion. It looks like something's been hit with an axe and then it exploded. All those little bright blue stars right in the same little location. And so it's associated with Agni, and it has the nature of releasing energy. Like that. It's mostly visual. When things in the sky are visual, like the planets and the stars are, and the houses, then you can explain the symbolism based on the visual characteristics of that stuff. Yeah, right? Floating wisdom, this is great. This is going really good. You guys are asking superb questions. Yeah, this will be recorded and it'll be on my site, so if you want to review it. Let's see. Okay, are ready, everybody? Next question. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Bring. What sign do you vibe with or like the most when it comes to interpretation? And what nakshatra? Nothing really. Ain't no particular sign I'm more compatible with. Ain't no particular sign that I particularly vibe with. They're all. What I vibe with is how does a sign mesh with a particular planet in a person's chart. Yeah, nakshatras, however, I do kind of have, personal favorite signs. There's something I like about every sign, to be frank. I do have more like of a favoritism with nakshatras. Like I really like Satabhishak. It's really easy for me to understand Satabhishak and Rohini. There's the nakshatras that I have are really easy for me to understand. So maybe I vibe with those more. Aaron asks, is there really anything special about a house lord being in its own house? Like the Lord of the Fifth and the Fifth or whatever? Yes, Aaron, it is special. It's special, special, so special, special. You got me singing, so I'm going to have to keep singing. It is special to have the Lord of the house in a house, just like when the person is at home, then they keep the thieves away and they keep the place clean. When the Lord of the house is in the house, it protects the qualities of the house. How special is it? It's not so special that it's going to stand on its own to defeat everything else, see? The most specialist thing about a chart is to read it the right way, which means to read everything in the proper contextual order. But in and of itself, it's very nice to have a Lord of a house in a house. There are maybe one or two interesting exceptions. The seventh Lord, if it stays in its own house, has a disadvantage in forming partnerships and interactions. That's an interesting bit. And also, it's not the only thing that's good for a house is to have the Lord stay in its house. For example, you see a lot of wealthy people get their wealth lords, 2, 12, 11, get them moving into each other's places and linking up with each other. So, think again about, or just think of a Raja Yoga, the Dharma, Karma, Adhipati Yogas, the Kendra Kona Adhipati Yogas, the Lords of the Kendras and Konas, angles and trines. So getting Lords out of the house is also good when they get out into the right spot and they mix up in the right way, but it's also a nice principle to keep the Lord in the house. Floating wisdom. Tell me at least one good thing, please, about the Saturn-Moon conjunction. Or is it all just doom and gloom? One good thing about a Saturn-Moon conjunction, let's say if that Saturn-Moon conjunction is really wonderful, then that Saturn-Moon conjunction means your heart, your emotions are under your control. Your desires are under your control. Your emotions are under your control. You are practical and pragmatic, and you don't get carried away. Lavarela is remaining distracted from her homework and says, do you notice a concentration of a particular nakshatra or ascendants in specific countries? That's a very interesting question. No. I haven't noticed that. But I did notice one interesting thing I may have mentioned before. In different countries, different symbols work differently. See, this is a very interesting thing about context. You have to not only consider the context of the chart, but also the context of the outside the chart. Like, if you're reading a chart of a person from 1400s in India, it's the symbols in that chart will produce different actual tangible effects than the same chart, theoretically, of a person living in the 21st century. Like, take the Mars-Saturn example. One thing I didn't mention in that interview with Parisa that we just did was Mars and Saturn often indicates a lot of capacity to work with technology, electrical technology. So, these days you see a lot of computer programmers and software engineers and IT technicians and electronic engineers who, with Saturn-Mars conjunctions or conjoined aspects. But what would that have done 6 centuries ago when there was no such thing as electronics? It would have been like a blacksmith or something. So you see, based on the cultural setting is another layer of context that you have to consider in how you interpret symbols. So the cultural setting of even in one contemporary age, there's different cultures and different environments in the world. So, a person with really wild love life indicated, but she's born in like a Muslim country, like one of those countries where they're like militant state-run religion. So how is that going to be able to manifest in that culture? It's going to manifest it in a different way than somebody that's born like Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco or something. So you also have to keep your cultural reference in mind. So on that point, I found that when I moved to Japan and did whatever readings I've ever done for Japanese people, I found a lot more Aries ascendants coming and Aries moon signs. Whereas in America, that Aries ascendant and Aries moon sign was like going so far that it would make the person not even want to believe in astrology. They do everything on their own. They determine their own destiny. But in Japan, where the culture is more conservative, that Aries ascendant and the Aries moon was giving the people more ability to do something unusual and go see a Vedic astrologer. Interesting cultural context thing. Okay, I plan to stick around for another 20 minutes. Let me check my calendar, make sure. I don't want to be bumping somebody's appointment. I plan to stay around for, let's see, another 20 minutes. I figure we could give an hour to this every week. I like it. It's going great. So let's see if we can keep it up next week too. So now let me go back there to the chat window. and see this questions. Do you think, look at this, I got a happy Gaur Purnim message. This is that. Thank you very much. Do you think outer planets are important in astrology? Oh, this is another good question that just caught my mind. Does the moon phase of the moon affect nakshatra? I'm going to answer both of those. Do you think that outer planets affect? Now I can't find it. Too many questions popped up. Here it is. Do you think outer planets are important in astrology? If yes, why do you think they were not included in Vedic scriptures? I hope that 25% of you already know my answer from listening to my other videos and stuff, because I'm fairly clear about this. And you know how I don't know. You know how I am. I'm kind of blunt and clear cut. So, do I think that the outer planets are important in astrology? No. And why? Because this goes back to Bumptious Gaday's question about if the planets are making us do things, then why are we the ones responsible for the karma? And my answer there was, the planets are not making you do things. The planets are indicating what's likely to happen, what's going to happen to you. And you see, the planets and the sky are a great big clock, and the astrologer is the person who knows how to tell time from that clock. You know, just like when you're 5 years old, 4 years old, and you look at a clock on the wall, you don't know what the heck it means. But later on, you learn how to you learn how to tell time, like in preschool and kindergarten. So similarly, when most people look at the stars and the position of the sun and all such things, they don't even notice it. They don't know what it is, what to speak of able to read it, to interpret it. But the person who studies the sciences of astrology learns how to read that clock. Now, what are these planets, outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, and other stuff, asteroids, etc., galactic storm clouds and all that stuff? What are they? Those are things that you can't see. So what good is there that there's a hand on the clock that I can't see? Don't forget, astrology is not a mechanistic universe. Astrology does not believe in a mechanistic universe, although if you go that route of thinking that the planets are you're just a robot and the planets are programming you, then you're in a mechanistic universe. But really, astrology is not the product of a mechanistic worldview. It's a non-mechanistic personal worldview of the universe. So don't forget that reality is alive and interacts with us. And reality is trying to communicate to us. It's not just us trying to understand reality. Reality is trying to be understood. It's trying to communicate to us. And that's why she has a clock. That's why she has body language. The universe shows us body language through the signs and the stars and the planets. What good would it be for her to speak a word that we can't hear? Or do a gesture that we can't see? So it doesn't make sense that there would be invisible things which are invisible to the naked eye, which would be essentially important in astrology to me. So therefore I say no, the outer planets are not important in astrology. Just like somebody else asked, what about the nakshatra parivartanas, the house exchanges between nakshatras? And I said, there's no such thing. But then I said, but it doesn't mean you can't do a great interpretation based on it. So it doesn't mean you can't do a great interpretation with the outer planets. I'm sure, obviously, there's really great interpretations you can make using the outer planets. But what I'm saying is, theoretically speaking, because you can do great stuff with anything. It's great stuff is not always just accurate or right. Sometimes it's just inspiring. But if you're talking to me, my nature is Saturn in the 5th house in Kritika. So I'm not the guy that's just doing whatever is inspiring. I do the stuff that I feel is correct and right. So in terms of what's correct and right, it's not correct and right to use the outer planets, in my opinion. But if you want to use them, go ahead and give people great readings with them. What was that other question? The other question I wanted to answer was about if the phase of the moon affects the nakshatra. Definitely. This is the basis, the original basis of the original Jyotish. Original Jyotish as defined and described in the brief text called Vedanga Jyotish, which is the Vedanga. It's the Vedanga. It's the ancillary to the Vedas. It's appended to both the Yajurveda and the Rig Veda. It tells people how to read the clock on the sky using the sun and the moon and the nakshatras so they can know when they should do the things that they should do. Because the Veda tells you the things you should do, but you need this Vedanga, this appendix, to tell you when you should do the things you should do. So that if you read Vedanga Jyotish, which you can actually get as a PDF, you can just Google Vedanga Jyotish, Vedanga, Jyotish, Jyotisha, PDF. Google that, you'll get a Vedanga, get access to it. And you'll see that it talks about sun, moon, and nakshatra, and the important components that come from it is the thing called the tithi, is the phase of the moon. And then there's the nakshatra of the moon. And then the relationship between the phase of the moon and the nakshatra of the moon gets analyzed into things called yogas. That's the original yoga. The original astrological yoga is the relationship between the phase of the moon and its nakshatra. And these yogas are very, very important for determining whether or not this moment is auspicious, or what should be done at this moment. What is it auspicious for? So you hit on a very important theme there with that question. Angel Ebb, somehow your question attracted my attention, even though it was asked a long time ago. Can you tell me, is my moon in the 5th in Shravana Pada 2 good for writing? Vic, can you tell me, is my moon in the 5th in Shravana good for writing? Moon in the 5th in Shravana, good for writing. Well, moon in Shravana is going to be good for words. Shravana means hearing, and moon is the mind. And 5th is creativity. It's good for writing. Let's see it go with some other stuff that's good for writing. Let's have a context in the chart that's also good for writing, and then this is really great. All right, let's see what other questions you got. You ready? Set. It's question time. Let me see. Yeah, here's another interesting question. How different do you think astrology would be if we lived on Mars? Well, how different do you think life would be if we lived on Mars? Mars is like uninhabitable. So if you lived on Mars, you would have a totally different astrology, but however, nobody lives on Mars. So there would be, if somebody lived on Mars, life would be completely different there. And similarly, there would be a different astrological setup. Let's say another one. Well, I'm not getting attracted to any particular question, so I'm going to close my eyes for a second. Try to write a question that's going to get my interest. Ready? I'll give you, let's see, I'll say Tatsavitur Varenyam Bharga Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Naha Prachodayat. And then I'll look at your question. Here's one. This one got my attention. 7th Lord in a Dushtana, like the 12th house. When it's in its own house, does it show loss through the wife when Venus is own house? Libra Swati, please advise. So, Pradeep Ji, please don't forget the main point that I'm trying to make. I put this post on Facebook. Let me say this again too. A lot of times questions, the way that they sound to me is like a question like this might sound a little bit like saying, if I wear 2 earrings on this ear and 1 earring on this one, and I stand on my left foot, will I win the lottery? Because the question is so specific that you don't realize that there's so many other things that are actually crucially important to determining the answer to your question besides the specifics that you are asking about. So please remember that whether or not the 7th Lord in the 12th house, whether it indicates a lousy marriage or a marriage to a foreigner or a spiritual marriage, whether or not which one of those possibilities comes out is entirely dependent upon the overall context of the chart as it relates to relationships. So if you have, for example, like a Revati ascendant and Anuradha moon, so you got really sweet, romantic, loving, partnerable nakshatras as your primary base, and there's like Taurus Navamsha, and your Navamsha 7th house looks great, and Venus has great dignity. Then Venus in the 12th house it would be silly to interpret that as meaning you have an awful marriage, because the whole context of the chart is about how great you are, how great your relationships are. So you see, that's what I want to answer to your question. Ooh, I like this. If I could be a planet, which would I be, and why? If I was a rich man, if I was a planet, sometimes. Now, how honest should I be? I don't want to scare anybody. Let's see, if I was a planet, I would just probably wind up being Saturn, but I really wouldn't enjoy that too much. I think I already am Saturn, so I want to do something else. If I was a planet, I would like to be Venus. I'd like to be Venus. Why? Because Venus makes the world wonderful for people, and Venus is beautiful. Babushka Day, another question that got my attention. Well, this is another interesting one. Since I answered a lot of questions from Babushka, let's see this one. Cardinal Drama. Would one's astrology play out better if you weren't aware of astrology in the first place? Would you mean, would your destiny play out better if you weren't aware of astrology? No, but that doesn't mean that if you got a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. No knowledge at all is also dangerous. A little knowledge could be even more dangerous, but that doesn't mean that the goal is not to have knowledge, because knowledge is prosperous. If you have knowledge of things, then you're able to interact with them fruitfully. So sometimes a little knowledge or wrong knowledge is worse than no knowledge. So to just tinker with your astrology or get into this context irrelevant interpretations of things, or get hung up or be fear-based in your interpretation of astrology, or have a mechanistic worldview thinking that the planets are making you do things and you have no say in the matter, this is just going to mess up your karma. You'd be better off not having those ideas at all. But the best thing would be to have a clear understanding of astrology to help you understand the truth about what's going on in your life, and therefore how to interact with it most productively. Let's see, we got 6 more minutes. What was that other question that I had there? What do you mean by moksha? Why do we need to attain moksha when we are born as God's greatest creation? You're not born as God's greatest creation. Who told you that? You are. We are. First of all, we're not a creation. We're not something that was ever created. We always exist. But we are, the essence of what we are is divine as God. But we have not realized that. We're not living that way. We're not living as what we could be. That's what moksha is. Moksha is to be freed from the misunderstandings of what we are, so that we can exist as that perfect divine entity that we are actually meant to be. Let's see what else we got. Ooh, this is a nice question from Eddie Rosario. Eddie, nice to see you. This is going to be a question. The answer to this question is going to be given in full clarity in my Nakshatra Sutra course. Do you guys know that I'm doing that course? You probably know because I tell everybody about it. But I'm doing in the Nakshatra Sutra course. If you don't know about it, just look on my YouTube channel, the video list. Like 4 videos ago, I give all the information about it. Nakshatra Sutra is the 27 lines from Taittiriya Brahmana that I'm going to explain. It's in Taittiriya Brahmana that it says Aryaman is the deva, or the divinity for Purva Palguni, and Bhaga is the deva for Uttara Palguni. I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger with that. All right? Yeah, and actually this would be a good way to end. I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger with this as to why that is and why that makes a lot more sense than the listing that we're more accustomed to. But I'll give you a little hint. It has to do with Palguni being all about fruitfulness. In other words, reproduction, fruitfulness. That's what Palguni means. Palam is fruit. Palguni means the one who brings out the fruit, like a banana peel brings out a banana, or like a flower brings out a fruit. So those things like banana, the skin of a fruit can be called a Palguni, or a flower can be called a Palguni. Or women are Palguni because they bring forth children. So Palguni nakshatras are all about fertility, reproduction, creativity, production of fruits. In order to do that, even if you're a flower, you need a male and a female part of your body to combine. Or if you're a mammal or something, you need the male creature and the female creature to combine. So one of the Palgunis is going to be very, very masculine, and the other one is going to be very, very feminine. Based on the fact that here I'm going to give you the answer. All of the Purvas are Ugra, strong. And they're first, Purva. They're leading, they're inceptive, they're initiating. So that's the Purva is the masculine nakshatra of the two. Uttara is the one that brings out the final development and brings forth the fruit. So she's always the second one, and she's Dhruva. The nature of every Uttara nakshatra is Dhruva. Purvas are always Ugra, strong, and Uttaras are always Dhruva, patient, forbearing, enduring, long term. So that's why actually Bhaga, which means vulva, belongs to, Bhaga is very, very feminine. It means the beauty, the beauty, the object of enjoyment. That should be in Uttara Palguni. And Aryaman, which means a responsible man, a trustworthy man. The word literally means that should be in the first part. So there you go. I gave you the whole answer. But by the time we get there in the Nakshatra course, it'll sink in a lot more and you'll understand it a lot more. So, my friends, thank you so much for joining me. I'm sorry that I couldn't see what everybody, wrote about and what everybody asked about. Aaron, you also just mentioned Arjuna. Arjuna is called Palguni. See how dexterous and beautiful he was, not just a warrior, but he was a dance instructor. Anyway, thank you everybody so much for joining me. We got tons of people, like 52 people watching. So thanks so much. Let's do this again. Let's do this next week at the same time. Get your questions ready. Now you know I'm kind of doing it with like a Wheel of Fortune style. I'll just close my eyes and then look at the thing, pick out a question. Thank you so much. See you next time. Radhe Shyam. Now, how do I stop this crazy thing? I'm going to have to press pause.